Few people I've met in my career care more about the art of teaching.
He has this infectious personality and people just want to be around him.
You could be 8 or you could be 80, and somehow you'll hear his class and you'll learn something and you'll laugh and you'll have a good time, and all of a sudden grammar is funny.
I'm Marvin Terban, and I have been a teacher at Columbia Grammar School for the last 60 years. I was a graduate student at Columbia University, and I was soon to get my diploma and had no job. And so someone said to me, you know, you could always be a teacher. I got 2 interviews. The first one was at Dalton, and at the end, the man shook my hand and said, we'll let you know, you'll be hearing from us. Well, it's been 60 years. I check the mail every day. I haven't heard from him yet. And then I had an interview at Columbia Grammar School, and at the end of the interview, the headmaster said, you've got the job. I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. They put me in the 5th and 6th grade. My classroom was the top floor front bedroom of an old house that had been built during Civil War times. One day I wrote on the board a riddle that said, I blank the blank. So I said, I look at the ocean. And the kid said, I see the sea, S-E-E-S-E-A. And they said what they rarely say to teachers, give us more, we like that. When I came home, I said to my wife, Karen, I think I hit on something. Riddles to teach homonyms. And those riddles became my first published book, 8-8, A Feast of Homonym Riddles. The 4th grade teacher came to me once in the faculty room and said, I know a girl, you and she get along beautifully. I said, where does she live? Brooklyn. I said, no, that's geographically unattainable.
He told me that she gave him the number, and then about a week or 2 weeks later she said, so did you call my sister-in-law yet? And he said, no, I haven't. He had lost the phone number.
And we met in April, we were engaged in May, and we were married in June. My older sister said, too fast, it won't last. And so last year, when we celebrated our 57th anniversary, I called my sister up and I said, Lorraine, you said it wouldn't last, and today's our 57th anniversary. What do you think now? And she said, we'll see.
CGPS has played a major role in my life. First of all, I met my husband through that school. Second of all, both my children went to that school.
Sometimes a teacher would stop me in the lunchroom and say, I want to tell you what your son did in my class today. And I said, don't. If you have to, call my wife. Tell her, let her have all the bad things.
I'm often amazed at his enthusiasm and the fact that he's going to be 83 years old and he has more energy than I do.
So when I was in his classroom, I remember early on we had to establish what to call him, Dad or Mr. Terban, and I think we came up with Mr. Dad.
He's a very devoted person. As you know, he's devoted to his job, but he's devoted to his family. There isn't anything he wouldn't do for his family.
What distinguishes my father from other teachers is his dedication and his loyalty, especially to CGPS. This is his home away from home.
There are very few examples of anyone I know who have been at an organization and had as much of an impact.
Marvin has taught us to be so caring and open and accepting, and he's like that in school.
He's not a teacher until 3 o'clock. He's a teacher all day long until he goes to bed.
What have I lived my life in the service of? I think people.
When he speaks of the school, you feel the love that he has for these buildings and all of the space and all of the people in it.
He doesn't care so much about the grades as for he wants you to get better at Latin.
Even after all this time, you'd think that he would be sleepwalking through the job, just kind of like going through the motions, and nothing could be further from the truth. He deeply cares about his students. He deeply cares about Latin.
Marvin is a great performer. I think probably a born performer. You know, he's comfortable up on the stage, giving a special effects-filled keynote presentation to an audience of hundreds of people. He can hold a room spellbound. And he brings that to his teaching in the much smaller Latin classes.
Mr. Terban was very funny. You know, he really had a great sense of humor. By thinking about, you know, these quirks of grammar, Mr. Terban would make humor a part of the way that we could learn.
He can retire whenever he wants, but he just loves this school, and we love him.
They feel that Marvin knows them, that he sees them, that they have a relationship with him. And so I think that's that ability to have the relationship and then also to be up there inspiring them is what makes him so great as a teacher.
I just want people to think he was a nice guy. Why am I putting it in the past tense? He is a nice guy, and he's helpful, and you can go to him and ask him for a favor or help, and he'll try his best to do it. My family grew up in a little town called Shebatovka in Ukraine. It was part of Russia then. And when the Russians came in and there were pogroms against the Jews in those shtetls and those villages, they knew they had to get out. In February of 1921, they paid $10 to travel to America. They signed their names with 3 O's because they couldn't read or write. They traveled across by boat, third-class steerage, and landed in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And that's where I grew up, a very, very poor city. But what got me out of there and gave me a life, besides the love of my parents, were my teachers. I had great teachers, starting with Miss Holgate. And Miss Holgate one day brought into class a box full of art materials. And she said, everybody's going to write a hardcover book. And I wrote one called The Fuzzy Green Dragon. And I looked at my book on display in the local public library, and I said, that's a real book. I wrote that book. I'm a real author. I could grow up to be a real author. She was the most inspirational teacher I ever had.
Wherever we go in the city, all of a sudden someone walks up to him and they say, oh, Mr. Terban.
I've seen students contact him over the years, and we're talking about 60 years, so these are students that have grown up and have had kids, and their kids have had kids, and they've emailed him and contacted him over the years, not only for advice, but to tell him what an impact he's made in their lives.
He had a ruler that he has saved for years and years that was in his desk drawer.
So the ruler, this is a great story. I recently had run into Mr. Terban again after not seeing him since 8th grade. I saw him as a parent. I said, Mr. Terban, I don't know if you would ever remember me. And he cut me off and said, Miss Fearman, of course I remember you. In fact, I have something of yours that I've been holding on to. This ruler with my name on it, my name that I wrote with my 8th grade handwriting, and it's my favorite prized possession.
What I hope people remember about me, I will tell you, I already know the answer to that question.
The word I would use is convivial, welcoming others to one's real or metaphorical tables.
Marvelous, because he is marvelous, but also because he would appreciate the alliteration.
He constantly gets referred to as the beloved Mr. Terban.
Energetic and passionate about what he's teaching.
He's my beloved, you can't have him.
It is there in his personality, in his sort of outward personality, in his joviality and his bonhomie, but I think it speaks to a much kind of deeper set of values that are at his core.
You have to be careful about retirement. You could retire and be so sorry you did it. So sorry you did it. And I don't want to do that. I love going into work every morning. I do. I don't even like the summer. It's too long, nothing to do. I want to get back to school. My work is my vacation.